Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. So, is it art of the deal, or what's the deal? While standing in Europe, President Trump says he has a framework for an agreement on Greenland.
It's right now a little bit in progress, but pretty far along. It gets us everything we needed to get.
Plus, law and order. What we are learning tonight about what Vice President J.D. Vance will soon tell local leaders when he steps foot in Minneapolis. Also at this hour, where's the beef? Another lifeline in a local community closes, leaving thousands without a job. Are rising beef prices next? And eat the rich. Can California and New York finally figure out how to make billionaires pay their fair share? The California Democrat Maxine Waters joins me tonight as those dreams face a roadblock. But first tonight, deal or no deal. President Trump says his tough talk secured the framework of a future agreement with Greenland, the culmination of a day dealing with European leaders, and as he faces more talks in mere hours. It started earlier today with a sprawling 72-minute speech to the world's elite. The president now demanding immediate negotiations over Greenland, walking back a threat to take it with troops.
I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
The president now showing the world just how far he'll go to get that piece of ice, as he described it earlier today. So does he now have the world on his side? Team coverage tonight, Robert Sherman has the reaction from world leaders abroad. Air Force veteran, Republican Congressman Don Bacon on his opposition, so far at least, to the president's moves, plus Chris Steyerwalt on the president's world stage statements. But we begin with our Kelly Meyer live over at the White House. Hello, Kelly.
Hey there, Blake. So the president's position on this really evolved through the day, from his speech this morning that you mentioned, saying if leaders stand in his way of getting Greenland, he told them, quote, "we will remember," to then hours later saying he had a productive meeting with NATO Secretary General where they came up with what he called a framework of a future deal on Greenland, though we still don't exactly know what's in that deal.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and other minerals.
So if this all works out, President Trump says his threatened 10% tariffs are off the table for NATO leaders. He also says using force to take Greenland is also off the table. President Trump says additional discussions are happening around the Golden Dome. Vance, Rubio, and Witkoff will head up the negotiations all on this and report back to President Trump. If it all works out, Blake, the president says this deal would be infinite. So this likely still the topic of conversation going into tomorrow in Davos, even as the president holds a signing ceremony on the Board of Peace for Gaza reconstruction and has a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky before heading back here to the White House. Blake.
All right, our Kelly Meyer live over at 1600. Kelly, thank you. Now from Davos, our Robert Sherman, News Nation international correspondent, with the reaction there this evening. Hello, Robert.
Hey there, Blake. Well, I can tell you on this side of the Atlantic, there's been a big sigh of relief from many of these European leaders that does not appear as though there's going to be any military action that would be taking place in Greenland, and all of this is moving towards a diplomatic end. That said, there's a bit of uncertainty as to exactly what this deal will look like and if all this tough talk is over or just at its beginning. Take a listen.
We'll be facing bigger tensions between Europe and the United States.
Do you think
in a time to come, and we'll have to get ready for that.
Europe needs to toughen up. We need to hold the line.
Coming out of that meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, the president said tariffs on Europe will no longer be needed because he feels satisfied with where this deal is going. That said, Denmark re-upping its stance that Greenland is not for sale, but in that same breath, they have said that all of Europe needs to invest more in Arctic defense.
The area around Greenland is not longer a low-tension area. We have seen that we should be more active, we should invest more, and we should do more together.
Worth noting that Europe did make an act of retaliation today against the administration. The EU Parliament voted to put the trade agreement between Europe and the United States on hold for fear that tariffs could have been coming down. Even though that tariffs are off the table now, that deal is still not formally back on, although there is a meeting taking place in Brussels with EU leaders tomorrow. Blake?
In the middle of all the action, Robert Sherman, live for us tonight in Davos. Robert, thank you. With us now, Republican Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska, been one of the biggest critics, Republican critics at least, of the president's push so far, even saying he'd lean toward impeaching the president if the U.S. military invaded. Congressman, thanks for being back with us tonight here on the Hill. So the president took that option off the table today. What we're witnessing right now just a negotiating tactic with the president? And if so, do you give him credit to where he's moved?
I do think it was a negotiating tactic to get more basing rights in Greenland. We probably need an anti-ballistic missile facility, maybe Air Force units or more access to Navy, probably a variety of things. He could have done this with a phone call to the Denmark leadership and also the Greenland leadership, and they would have been glad to do it. And so I do think it was a strategy or a tactic for negotiating. It was unnecessary. You do not threaten force every day for like 2 weeks with an ally. And I always thought it was probably a tactic to get to a deal, but you don't treat your allies this way. It could have all been done in a more friendly way.
Congressman, do you believe him when he says the military option is no longer on the table?
I do. First of all, it is so ludicrous to threaten force against a NATO ally. I mean, the whole notion, I said this before, and I don't even like using the word, but it's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard, threatening a NATO ally with military force. All this could have been done with a telephone call. And unfortunately, it hurt relations and it's going to have a long-term negative impact, I fear. I've talked to so many elected people from Europe, from the Baltics all the way to Great Britain and Denmark, and a lot of places in between, and they've lost trust in our leadership. They're starting to see us more as a threat, and it's so unnecessary. We're becoming America alone, and that's not a safe place for America.
You know, Congressman, you talked about the negotiating and maybe what the president wants here. There's obviously the military base there in Greenland and the threat against China and the threat against Russia. But I picked up on something that the president first said yesterday and then mentioned again today. Here it is, and then we'll pick it up on the other side.
Who the hell wants to defend a license agreement or a lease? I mean, look,
going to use force?
You know, take a look at the word license, take a look at other things.
So we talked there about a license yesterday and then again today. Do you think what the president wants here is a strengthened military presence for the United States on Greenland and then some sort of a deal for the rare earth elements?
I think they're both factors. There's no doubt that he wants more military presence in Greenland, which he could have done easily. We already have an agreement that allows us to do this pretty much on our own decision-making, so this wasn't necessary. Now, I also think America and the free world, we need more rare earth mineral access. We do not want to rely on China. I think this is a worthy goal, but again, the people in Greenland would love to have had a deal with America that we invest there and you share the profits. This was all unnecessary.
Let me ask you about Vladimir Putin before you run. On Trump's bid to acquire Greenland, quote, "It doesn't concern us." Do you believe Putin there, or do you think he's concerned?
I think it's a strategy to talk about Ukraine for him. Their viewpoint is America threatens Greenland for the same reasons we want Ukraine, because it's good for defense. That was a problem with this whole stuff from President Trump. When you threaten an ally because it's important for your national security, how is that different than Russia saying we need Ukraine for the same thing, or China saying the same thing about Taiwan? I thought it put America on a very thin ice using this rationale. And again, you don't do this with allies. These are NATO allies. I wish President Trump talked to Russia the way he talks to our allies. He treats Russia with velvet gloves or kid gloves, and he treats our allies with boxing gloves, and it doesn't make sense.
Retired Air Force veteran, Congressman Don Bacon, Republican, Nebraska, with us tonight here on The Hill.
Thank you.
Catch you again soon, Congressman. Thanks. Joining me now, Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello, doctor.
What a day, brother.
What a day. Obviously, a lot of the focus on Greenland, right? But what did you pick up on?
Sentences that you never would have said before.
I mean, look, as someone who's been to Davos and covered it, like it's like the elite of the elite, and you talk about all the finance stuff. Not this, but here we are. What did you pick up on from the president's speech today overall?
Donald Trump has not entirely lost the capacity to shock and stun, but it gets harder and harder. Excuse me, the bid price for Donald Trump to get people's attention. This is a funny thing. It's a rhetorical inflation problem. The president says a lot of stuff, right? He's constantly talking. They say he's been the most transparent president in history. There's truth in it. He does interview after interview and talks and talks and talks. And I think a lot of his rhetoric, a lot of his threats, a lot of stuff has been discounted over time because people are like, yeah. Okay. Canada's the 51st state. So on this one, the president had to keep increasing the rhetoric and the intensity and the social media content until eventually, not just Europe, but Americans and financial markets all responded like, well, I guess it might be true. And that's sort of, you remember we talked a lot about taco at
Trump
the time.
always chickens out.
That's right. And it speaks to
which is a financial thing.
It speaks to the problem of the rhetorical inflation. How do you get people's attention? So in this case, he talked about it until people had to treat it as a credible threat. Then you saw what happened to Treasury bills. You saw what happened to all this stuff. And then he had to relent.
I'm old enough to remember when when the politicians used to go overseas and the old adage was leave the politics back.
Politics stops at the water's edge.
Politics stops at the water's edge. Gavin Newsom yesterday, Scott Bessent today. Roll it.
I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought up a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders.
He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros.
2028 spilled out onto the world stage, Chris. I think that's some of what we saw there as well.
The most dangerous place, the most dangerous 6 feet, this joke has been said to many people, but the most dangerous 6 feet of territory in the world is the 6 feet between any Democratic 2028 contender and a television camera. And they're going to fill that space, and Gavin Newsom and these folks know where to go to get all the attention.
As part of the president's speech today, speaking of Democrats and the president's attention, there was also this theme.
Under Sleepy Joe Biden, new domestic oil and gas leases fell by 95%. Biden had given Ukraine and NATO $350 billion. Biden and his allies destroyed our economy. Biden admitted more than 8 million new migrants.
Trump's obviously trying to draw a distinction between this is what I inherited and this is where I'm going. Should he continue heading into the midterms to make that analogy or dichotomy, or is it time to let it go 366 days in?
Well, what Donald Trump should or should not do by the normal rules of politics does not necessarily apply. But I will say that for voters, here's what happens. For the first year, or for a big chunk of the first year, you're comparing the new president with the predecessor, or more particularly, the choice that you had. So Americans for 2025 could ask, would I rather it have been Kamala Harris?
Right.
Would I rather Kamala Harris be president? And that comparison helps incumbent presidents maintain some numbers. You get into year two, that's not what anybody's thinking about anymore. Nobody's thinking like, what if it had been Kamala, or very few people are, and it becomes a less salient argument to make as time goes by.
Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday. Thank you, brother.
My friend.
Appreciate it. Still to come. Shots fired during a targeted immigration raid. The community coming out in force moments later.
You know you're not that. You guys are not patriots.
We'll show you what happened in Los Angeles today. Plus, taxed into oblivion, Democrats from California to New York battle it out over plans to tax the rich. Are they going anywhere? And a plant closure devastates a small town in America and could impact what happens next with beef prices. What lawmakers are now doing to help one Nebraska community, that's next. I'm Blake Burman, other side of the break. 4 minutes out. See you then. probably dinner time or close to it wherever you live in this country tonight. And if you look in your fridge, there's a good chance that there's something there from Tyson Foods with its incredibly recognizable logo. But in Lexington, Nebraska, Tyson meant a paycheck, a house payment, a family's plans for tomorrow. This plant right here was the heart of the town for decades. More than 3,000 people work there. That's nearly 1 in 3 residents in Lexington. And now those doors are closed, leaving thousands of families wondering there what comes next. And a state with losses north of $3 billion annually because of it. Joining us now is Republican Congressman Adrian Smith, great state of Nebraska. This is happening in his district with us tonight here on the Hill. Congressman, I know this is of huge importance to you. I thank you for joining us. I was reading today the First United, yes, of course, the First United Methodist Church in Lexington. 65 members there. Now it's just 14 because of this plant closure. Can you explain what this means for your part of Nebraska and what, if anything, is being done to help the folks there?
Well, certainly I'm concerned about the community. It's devastating to the community. Sadly, Tyson Foods made this decision. I struggle to think it was the best decision, but looking forward, I've really emphasized how important it is that Tyson avail the facility for sale to the next occupant, hopefully. I get questions about its availability, and so I try to forward that information to the city leaders, and hopefully they can innovate a way forward. But we need Tyson to be a willing seller for the property.
Tyson Foods statement: we are currently assessing how we can repurpose the facility within our own production network. I'm guessing, Congressman, you don't agree much with Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate. But he wrote a letter to the Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins saying that they need to, quote, act swiftly to pressure competition, help bring prices down for families and farms, and save jobs. Is he right here? And is there anything that the Trump administration can or should do?
Well, I think Senator Schumer has really been politicizing this. It's kind of sad that he's chosen to try to get political leverage here. What we need to do is look at what are good policies moving forward to make sure that the community can land on its feet and be resilient with all of this. I think there are some good signs of resilience, but clearly this is a painful situation, and it's not something to politicize.
Has the administration told you that they're going to address this in any way?
Well, there's a lot of interest in this, and certainly I'm concerned about the community. I'm concerned about the beef industry, livestock industry in general. These are issues that I've never sensed Senator Schumer caring about in the past, and largely, though, for consumers as well. We see about a 74-year low inventory of cattle available, even to take to market. So there are dynamics here that I hope we can work together to address, and keep in mind, though, the impact to producers. That's very important. Without them, we don't have available food supply, and ultimately to consumers as well.
Beef prices up 16.5%, Congressman, in 2025. There's 4 main companies, the Big Beef 4, that control 80 to 85% of the U.S. fed cattle slaughter capacity and boxed beef sales. Is it time to take a look and break them up, or as a conservative, that goes too far for you?
Well, I'm glad that a company by the name of Sustainable Beef, for example, opened a new plant not too far away from Lexington in the North Platte community, a few miles down the interstate. They are just now reaching their capacity, and which is good news. And I think they are looking to even have a stronger output there. I really salute that. I'm glad that they had, and this is a group of producers themselves who formed and invested in this new plant. Very high tech, very efficient. I'm glad that they are there to help take up some of this slack here, ultimately for producers and ultimately consumers as well.
10,000 people again in Lexington, Nebraska, 3,200 jobs lost there as a result of this. Congressman Adrian Smith represents the area there with us tonight here on the Hill. Best of luck. Keep in touch here and let us know what happens, Congressman.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on.
All right, of course. Speaking of eating, how about this? Eating the rich. how progressive plans to tax the super wealthy in California and New York, are they starting to backfire within their own party? What's happening tonight? Plus, Barron Trump, why he's now being hailed a hero by a young woman who says he saved her life. What we are learning at this hour on what's being described as heroic actions, and tensions flare over another immigration-related shooting in California. Bottom of the hour, some of the top stories that we're following here in our newsroom, 6:30 on the East Coast and 12:30 overnight in Davos, Switzerland, as President Trump wrapped up his first day at the World Economic Forum by announcing a deal, a framework on Greenland, saying that's in the works. Tension will continue in Davos tomorrow when the president will be holding a signing ceremony to formalize his Board of Peace when it comes to Gaza. Now, that board will oversee the next phase of the peace deal between Israel and Hamas and includes leaders from all over the globe. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, announcing that he's accepted the president's invitation to join. President Trump asked today about why he extended an invite to Vladimir Putin.
This is the greatest board ever assembled, and everybody wants to be on it. But, yeah, I have some controversial people on it, but these are people that get the job done.
Now, at this hour, the Kremlin says only that Putin is studying the proposal. Back up on Capitol Hill, this side of the pond, the House Oversight Committee advancing a measure to hold former President Bill Clinton and his wife, the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in criminal contempt. It comes after the Clintons failed to testify in the committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, despite being subpoenaed.
Today, the Clintons must be held accountable for their actions.
Subpoenas issued by our committee must always be respected. No president or former president is above the law.
Do you think we're okay? Our partners over at thehill.com report that the Republican Congressman James Comer, who you just heard there, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, turned down an offer from the Clintons' attorneys seeking a compromise to the deposition dispute on Tuesday. Other side of the country, Los Angeles, a chaotic scene unfolding after shots fired and one Border Patrol agent was injured.
That's attempted murder.
He's not a good guy. I can tell you.
This coming in from our Nexstar affiliate, KTLA. Homeland Security says it all happened during a targeted operation meant to arrest an illegal immigrant accused of human smuggling and domestic violence. An agent firing shots at the man after they say he attempted to ram an officer with his car. The incident comes as the Vice President, J.D. Vance, prepares to visit Minneapolis tomorrow after weeks of those protests there. The White House says the Vice President will meet with local leaders and make remarks in an effort to restore law and order. It also comes as ICE operations kick up in Maine in what's called Operation Catch of the Day. DHS says it's already arrested 50 people. The operation comes after fraud allegations similar to those in Minnesota. Other side of the break, here on the Hill, the battle that is brewing in California and in New York. The Democratic dreams to tax the rich. Why is there infighting within the party? Other side when we return.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having us here at the White House.
News Nation Tonight. The exclusive interview continues. Katie Pavlich one-on-one with President Donald Trump.
It's a job that has its dangers.
Tonight, 10/9 Central on Katie Pavlich Tonight. Only on News Nation.
All right, well, a battle is brewing in New York with the governor there, Kathy Hochul, rejecting a new wealth tax, even as the New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani keeps pushing the idea.
Our administration is preparing to make the case that it is the time for New York's most profitable corporations and wealthiest residents to pay their fair share.
And then we take you out west, California, seeing a similar fight with a proposed billionaire tax that is sparking some backlash from the state's wealthiest. The plan would impose a one-time 5% tax on billionaires' net worth, an idea that's actually opposed by the governor there, Gavin Newsom.
It's a badly drafted effort. It's already had an outsized impact on this state.
Joining us now here on the Hill, she is the Democratic Congresswoman from California, top Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, Maxine Waters, back with us once again. Congresswoman, nice to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight. You heard the governor there in your state. Is he wrong?
Well, let me just say this. I have the greatest respect for our governor. He's hardworking. He's very intelligent. He's a real leader. Okay. I don't know enough about why he's supporting, not supporting, rather, a tax on billionaires. I don't have the information that I should have. It's in the legislature. Everyone knows I'm a big supporter of consumers. I'm one of the ones who served on the conference committee for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And so I am a progressive who helped to create a way for consumers to be treated fairly, et cetera, et cetera. There's always been a discussion about whether or not the richest people in this country are paying their fair share of taxes. Now, I understand the governor is making an argument about what? I don't know what he's saying. What is he saying exactly?
He opposes this idea of this 5% one-time tax. And you've got Democrats in your state, your colleague Ro Khanna, who are supporting it.
Yes, I know. And of course, there's oftentimes a difference of opinion. We're not always of the same thoughts and thinking and public policy ways that we would like to have done. And let me just say this. This is the beginning of the conversation as far as I'm concerned. I have not talked with the governor. He's been in my district a couple of times. I've not seen him. I don't know what he's thinking, whether he's thinking, well, a one-time tax is too much. Is he thinking 5% or whatever is too much? Is he thinking that maybe it should happen 5 years from now? Is he thinking? I don't know what he's thinking about why he supports it. I am not going to talk about where I stand at this point without talking with him. And then I will be very clear about what I think.
You haul the growth index. People coming in, people coming out. California, Congresswoman, your home state has been last for the 6th year in a row when it comes to people coming in or people coming out. And here is David Sachs, who is in the Trump administration about this idea. He's a billionaire from California. Here's what he said.
I've been in California for 30 years. It was painful to leave. I had no problem paying one of the highest taxes in the country. I think it's 13.3%. But this is different. This is not a tax. This is an asset seizure. Never been anything like this before in American history. Right. People are trying to minimize it by saying it's a one-time. It's not a one-time.
That truly is something.
By the way, I said billionaire. I don't know his net worth. He's very wealthy. What would you say to him there?
Well, what I'm saying is, I think it's unusual to have a billionaire saying they don't mind paying the taxes and that there's a difference of opinion here. And I do think this is going to be a healthy discussion about this issue. But again, to have a billionaire say it's not too much and that he's willing to do it is very interesting.
Well, you know, let me take you to the other side of the coast because you have Kathy Hochul, the Democratic governor there in New York, put out her budget today. Or put out her budget this week, and she did not include a tax on the richest, which is what Zohran Mamdani wanted. Isn't that a reality check, or is it not? I don't know, whatever you think, that whatever Mamdani wants going forward in New York with the richest paying for some of the services there just isn't going to happen?
Well, no, here's what I think. You're going to have a healthy discussion on this issue, and you're going to have people who feel strongly about it, others who do not feel strongly about it, and I think it's time for this discussion to get out into the public, and I thank you for even having me here today to talk about it. I'm very, very pleased, and I tell you what, I'd like to have a discussion with the governor. Will you call me back to ask me exactly what I heard and what stance am I going to take?
How about that? When you speak to Gavin Newsom or Kathy Hochul about this, we'll have you on back and let you know because you're one of the leaders on this, and there's clearly a question here in California, in your home state, and in New York on the other side of the coast on what happens. Are Democrats going to raise taxes on the richest or not? She's Maxine Waters, Congresswoman, California. Thanks for being with us tonight.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. See you soon. All right. Other side of the break. Look who's around me. Full panel. Sean Spicer, Megan Hayes, Julia Manchester, that was interesting, no?
Yeah.
What, you didn't think so?
I was very intrigued by her response.
All right, look, it's a conversation that's going to play out. Overseas, speaking of money, Trump in Davos today. And what is going on with the president's travel? You'll get into that on the other side. Full panel with me when we return.
The price of safety and security and national security and international security having to do with many of your countries. That's really the price, and that's the big price. And it's better if we have Greenland than it is without. It's going to be safer, it's going to be stronger, it's going to be better for Europe, and it's going to be better for us.
President Trump in Davos, Switzerland today, meeting with the Secretary General of NATO. Shortly after that meeting, the president announcing a framework, as he described it, on Greenland is in the works, and that tariffs are no longer on the table. Full panel here with me now, Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill, Megan Hayes, special assistant for former President Joe Biden, and Sean Spicer, White House press secretary during the first Trump administration, News Nation political contributor. Hello to you both. Appreciate you having being in tonight. Hello, Julia. It was interesting because we went into this and it was like the military option's on the table. Then the president takes it off the table, and the big news tonight is he says there's a framework for some sort of a deal on Greenland.
Yeah, and he says there's no more tariffs that he will implement on those European nations. Certainly big news. I think the president and his allies will frame this as him negotiating with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, who he has a pretty good relationship with. I thought it was interesting listening to the Secretary General and how he's really tried to cozy up or butter up to President Trump over the past few weeks, and obviously that's paid off. But the president's critics are already saying this is another example of taco. Trump always chickens out. So do with that what you will.
I heard the president, Sean, announce this framework, and I immediately thought, well, there was a framework on a China deal, and we haven't gotten a lot of details. There was a framework for a health care plan, and we haven't gotten a lot of details. He did an interview with CNBC tonight and called it a, quote, concept of a deal. So how real is this?
I got to imagine it's pretty real. I'll be interested to see. The funny thing about it is that we had pretty much carte blanche militarily going into this. So he said tonight that he wasn't particularly interested in the minerals, which frankly I am. So if
do you believe that? Because like Venezuela was about drugs, and then all we've heard since is oil.
Well, look, he should have. I mean, the only thing that was weird is that everybody knew the minerals part was critical, so why not just say it? But I do think that the strategic piece is critical. Regardless, I don't really care, to be honest with you. I think that when you look at our strategic interest in the Arctic to abut Russia and China, like, I don't really care why. I just hope that we do it, we grow, put a bigger footprint there. There is a big national security reason, I think, that we have talked about for, I mean, when you think about it, literally a century.
Do you give the president some credit here? Like, we all know his negotiating tactics, right? And it's go big, say something that's out there, and then bring it back to the middle. It seems like that's kind of where we are.
We've had the same deal since like 1951. So I'm not sure what framework or what credit he deserves here for negotiating anything, except sending the stock market spiraling yesterday, or sending the market spiraling, making our allies make bold statements publicly on a national or on an international stage against us, making Canada say that they are going to start working with China because they don't have resources coming from us. I mean, that is very embarrassing, and we are becoming isolationists. And for what? For land, we already could have had land on Greenland militarily anyways. They said we could have all access of what we want. So I'm just confused of what he negotiated here that his framework is.
Well, look, the devil's going to be in the detail. Obviously, the Europeans were willing to give a lot today. Denmark said that they were willing to give a lot. Greenland said that they were willing to give a lot. So I think we'll see what the details, what this framework looks like. But at the end of the day, again, as far as I'm concerned as an American, I just hope that we walk out of this as a stronger and more secure nation, which I think we will.
I follow the prediction markets and the betting markets. They were all over the place today. Let me show you a couple of them. Kalshi and Polymarket basically had this at somewhere in a 30% chance or so, and they're moving all over the place right now. Julia, I'm looking at it at about a 25% chance or so. So there's still a question out there of, is this going to happen and how real this is?
Absolutely, and we're seeing reporting from the New York Times and the Telegraph that talks about how, you know, there's a framework for a deal that would allow the U.S. to essentially sort of control parts or pieces of Greenland. It's very vague right now. We reached out to the White House about this, and they say, look, we're still finalizing the details. Once all parties are on board and those details are finalized, you're going to hear more. But it seems that, you know, from my vantage point, from the NATO and Brussels side of things are starting to.
Well, you heard the president use the word. He said, "Look, I'm not sure that we want to fight for a lease, right? The idea of, do we get something more permanent, more concrete, that we know that we've got our interests protected?"
He mentioned licensing twice in 2 days. I picked up on it yesterday. He said it again today. What does he mean there?
I think what he means is, you know, you think about it, a lot of people have a house where they've got a 99-year lease, ground lease, or, you know, we've had these interests in Hong Kong, or other countries have, rather, Britain in that case. And so it expires. And at some point you say, well, if we're concerned about our national interest, why is there a time limit on it? I have a feeling that that has something to do with this, both in terms of landmass and time.
But again, we've had a treaty in place since 1951, so I'm not sure. But this is like kind of what we do with Cuba. We have Gitmo at Cuba, and we pay them. They don't cash checks. So it's kind of interesting that he all of a sudden thinks that we're going to need these licensing agreements. And also, a lot of these minerals you can't actually get out of the land because the land is frozen. So it's just like the oil in Venezuela, where all the oil companies are like, we actually can't do anything here. It's not cost efficient to us.
We also learned today, Julia, President Trump going to Iowa next week when he gets back. Here was the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, about a month or so ago on this idea.
He's going to campaign like it's 2024 again. Oh. For all these people that he helps. He doesn't help everybody, but for those he does, he's a difference maker, and he's certainly a turnout machine.
The first stops for the president late last year when they put him back out on the road were Pennsylvania and North Carolina, swing states. Now he's going to Iowa, where there's races up and down the ballot there.
Absolutely. And even though Iowa, I would say, maybe leans more to the redder side of things, Iowa is still very important, particularly in the midterms. There's a governor's race, an open governor's race, an open Senate seat, a number of very highly contested House races, which could play a role in deciding the House majority. So it makes sense that the president is heading to Iowa. Susie Wiles today at Davos told the press pool that President Trump will start to be going on more of these trips on a weekly basis. So we're going to see more of this going forward.
I was looking, Sean, at the and Megan, at the 2018 midterm stops, right? Because that's, I guess, kind of the analogy here. He went to 22 different states all over the country, swing states, red states, blue states, purple states. What do you expect to get out of him going forward? Because the first two were swing states, and I was like, it's the midterms that matter going forward, and now he's heading into Iowa.
I think there's a mix. Like, so you go to Iowa right now, you can talk about what you've done in terms of soybean purchases out of China, so it gives you an accomplishment to talk about as well, something that permeates well beyond Iowa. So there's a big soybean population, or population of farmers in Virginia even. So that resonates a lot more. I think he's going to go to a combination again. There'll be some red states, there'll be some battleground states. Remember two things that are important going into the midterms. One, the landscape is contracted. There's maybe 35 seats at stake. And number two, the financial advantage. I've been in this game for 30 years. I've never seen anything like it. If you take the RNC, the NRCC, and Trump's super PAC, you're well over $400 million. You look at the DNC and their affiliated organizations, you're probably somewhere in the $30 to $40 million range. That disparity has never occurred in modern political history.
How much does that worry you?
It worries me a lot. I think not having money to go up on air is a really bad sign for the Democrats, but I think that this is where all races are local. And I do think this is where the Trump factor, where he can go into some of these states that are very firmly R plus 15 or more, he'll do fine there. But I think some of these more swing districts, these members are going to have a hard time defending Trump's policies.
You can't put, when you start talking about 35, 40 races, and you talk about spreading $400 million over that's insane, right?
They're not going to spend it all in one place.
No, but the president also gets this more than anything else. He's seen the movie after the first term of what happens, so he knows what's at stake. Maintaining a Republican majority is critical to his agenda and critical to not spend every day waking up getting impeached and investigated.
Give you the last word.
I think that's interesting that you brought up impeachment, because we heard Speaker Johnson bring that up at the Turning Point USA America Fest in December, and President Trump brought that up while speaking to House Republicans earlier this month. month. I think impeachment, the threat of impeachment, is going to be a real turnout machine for Republicans.
Julia, Megan, Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Before we go tonight, the King of the Hill this evening might be Baron Trump. How about this? The Metro UK is reporting this evening that a woman testified in court today that the 19-year-old son of the president saved her life. The woman says Barron FaceTimed her while she was being severely beaten by a man. Baron Trump, who was in the U.S. at the time, immediately called the police there in the U.K. Now, it's being reported that the alleged assailant is now facing assault and rape charges. At 6'9", we knew Barron was the size of a lion, I guess you could say, but apparently he's got the heart of one, too. This story just coming in tonight. Well done to Baron Trump. Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up next. She is digging into Prince Harry's testimony in court today. Speaking of what's going on across the pond and the likelihood that he and famous figures like Elton John actually win their case in the media. That's coming up seconds away here on News Nation. Elizabeth Vargas reports moments away. I thank you for watching us tonight here on the Hill. I'm Blake Burman. I hope you're back with us tomorrow. I leave you with a live look tonight of the White House. The president, as we know, is across the pond in Davos, Switzerland, making that big statement and big announcement today on Greenland. But tomorrow, conversations about his board of peace. Who will sit on it? Vladimir Putin, maybe? Benjamin Netanyahu today saying he was invited. Davos, you never know what's going to happen when the world's elite and all the leaders gather there. We will be here for it tomorrow. I thank you so much for watching us tonight. I hand it over to Elizabeth up in New York.